The primary principles of group therapy that I've learned so far come from Irvin Yalom, that the group is a microcosm of society. We may think of society as a dynamic system of personalities and circumstances. Each individual will establish a role in the group that parallels their locations in society. This includes the therapist. Second, an individual's personality will be expressed in the group as is relevant to its role in their everyday lives. That every client's engagement behavior reflects aspects of their presenting problem is the basis of what makes group therapy effective. It is the therapist's task to learn to perceive and respond to the salient aspects of the client's behavior in the group setting. Nothing that happens in the clinical therapy group is superfluous. These two principles seem to me to constitute the foundations of group therapy and group dynamics. A therapeutic group is intentionally constructed and managed with recognition that change is desirable and must be evaluated. Among the many aspects of a group, the following demarcate its stages of growth. Selection. The therapist must screen and select clients to assemble a group who are likely to work together effectively. Consent. All group members must engage voluntarily and have the right not to. Confidentiality. All group members agree to withhold information about one another from anyone outside of the group. Confidentiality is an expectation for group therapy participation, though may be hard to enforce. Goals. Setting goals for each individual as well as the group as a whole provides direction. Norms are expectations for group behavior and treatment of one another. Diversity, equity, and inclusion are basic expectations for members with respect for customs and differences. This is to be made explicit in sessions and monitored carefully. Cohesion. Members are encouraged to support one another. This is essential to creating a functional group. Feedback. Members are also encouraged to honestly communicate with one another, including critical observations. Reflection. Reflective engagement is conscious thinking about what one experiences. Self-awareness can be unfamiliar and uncomfortable to some people. Helping them to engage authentically with themselves is critical to the group therapy process. Assessment. Frequent assessment with objective analysis of individuals and of the group as a whole is crucial to effective therapy. In order to develop my awareness and agency in working with groups, I focused on a specific principle of interpersonal dynamics. This is the principle of triangulation, as developed by Bowen in his family systems theory. This perspective implies approaches to assessment and response in order to facilitate change. Systems theory emerged in the early 20th century as a multidisciplinary approach to complexity and collective behavior. Carl Bertalanffy was a biologist who founded general systems theory and formulated many of the main tenets used at present. That systems have properties that follow from the dynamics of their parts is expressed in the familiar and ancient proposition, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. The important point here is that groups of people form systems. This is true of the clinical therapy group as well as naturally occurring collectives. One of the main principles of systems theory is that change in any part of a system changes the whole system.
Remember that in any kind of an emotional system, there is interlocking with other systems. And when any person changes in a system, the system changes.
The parts of the system and their relations are also transformed by systemic change. So a therapy group has its unique developmental path, which necessarily results in change for its members. Shaping that change to the benefit of the individuals is the task of the group therapist. Bowen's theory of family systems is an application of general systems theory to family therapy. I believe that all family therapy is a type of group therapy. Thus, we may recognize some key aspects of therapeutic practice by considering how aspects of family systems therapy may be employed in group therapy generally. The feature for family systems theory that I focus on is triangulation. Bowen regarded interpersonal triangles as fundamental forms of human relationships. He viewed the dyad, a relationship between two people, as inherently unstable, such that people naturally seek a third factor in order to gain stability. The third factor can be another person, or a common goal, or a common problem, among other possibilities. On this view, we naturally seek triangulation, so recognizing the formation of interpersonal triads is a way for the therapist to conceptualize the group process in action. The idea of a triad, as basic to human psychology and sociality, is baked into the crust of Western culture. Plato developed the first model of personal psychodynamics in his theory of the tripartite soul, which consists of desire, emotion, and reason. Plato used this model to explain personality dysfunctions and applied that model to his analysis of society and the organization of power. 2 millennia later, Freud produced a tripartite model of the self as the id, ego, and superego, the active dynamics of which produce the individual personality. To appreciate the power of triangulation, consider what's special about a triad. The one, or monad, is an individual unity. Two such monads combine into a dyad through a set of relations between them. The triad adds much more than a third object or relationship. It instantiates relations of relations. This is what makes the triad a fundamental form of a system and why threes show up as basic principles in so many areas of life. The physics of the dynamics of two bodies, objects, planets, particles, etc., can be fully solved mathematically. Add a third body, and there is no general closed-form solution. A triad produces complexity at orders of magnitude way above the dyad and the monad. With three parts, we introduce chaos into the system, with the resulting change being unpredictable, while the tendency to change is irresistible. How then do these system dynamics operate with human beings? My current interest in triangulation grew from the study of Bowen in the family therapy course, which I took early in my graduate counseling program. An assignment in that course was to produce a personal genogram which maps the individuals and relationships of my family going back at least 3 generations. When I produced my genogram and began to write about it, I became vividly aware that my family experience has always been dominated by triangles, each of which features my mother at its apex. This was a startling discovery for me, as I've long wondered how my mother, who was physically and mentally ill, was able to so thoroughly dominate our family. She was too nervous to drive or work and spent long periods bedridden, yet held a tight grip on attitudes and behavior of our family members. How did she do it? The answer is that she produced and exploited triangles in everyone and everything. This included people, objects, events, and imaginary phenomena. All of us were triangulated against one another, much like the way that primary school children will form bonds by identifying a third person to oppose together. Corporations and nations operate with this dynamic as well. My mother emphasized the necessity of loyalty within our family, which continually put each of us to a loyalty test. For instance, when we went out to dinner, she would pick a fight with the food server, then challenge each of us to prove our loyalty to her through support, if only by passive acquiescence. The tactical techniques of this triangulation were emotional withholding and escalating conflict. The practical effect was, if you're not with me, you're against me, which was to put to the test at every opportunity. The result? Manipulation and domination, effectively manifested. I love my mom, and this understanding of her operating principles makes me more empathetic to her. The insight that our family dynamics were driven by triangulation is one of the most important things I've learned about myself. It helps me to understand why and how I'm driven away from intimacy in relationships. That's important for me to reckon with in order to manage bias as a therapist. Consequently, I'm strongly motivated to understand interpersonal triangulation as applied to therapy, both group and individual. I believe with Bowen that individuals and groups will seek triangularity with other members. These triangles may be compatible, oppositional, formal, or incidental, but they will always impact the group as a whole. In a therapy group, there may emerge dozens of active triangles, which may change character as the group changes. Bowen had two main approaches to triangles in couples therapy. One was to work singly with each of the members of the couple to establish strong dyadic relationships. Then, while working with the members together, to be alert for efforts to form triangulations with the therapist. Given that the couple was in therapy because of instabilities of their didactic relationship, the motive to establish triangles was necessarily strong. Bowen would then deflect efforts to incorporate him in a triangle, which redirected the dynamic energy to the couple's dyadic, resulting in changes in their relationship. The other of Bowen's therapeutic methods was to work with the couple jointly and allow the triangulation, but then to successively withdraw from the triangle, thus causing the clients to reconfigure their couple's dynamic. By strategically positioning oneself within group relations, a therapist may produce conditions and effects to which individual members will respond. In effect, I'm seeking to learn how to use the energy of triangulation as my mother did, except instead of using it to create dependence upon me, I may engage with those dynamics to facilitate social growth for others. Because the therapy group is a microcosm for the world that each member inhabits, it's likely that their growth will transfer to their real-world situations. Conceived as such, this is not manipulation, but instead a kind of practice through which participants experientially develop new possibilities in their expressions of personality and social repertoires. This form of active and strategic therapy is very attractive to me, and while I'm at an early stage of awareness, sets for me a goal to which I may aspire as an emerging psychotherapist. Two may be company, and perhaps three as a crowd, but it is the madness of crowds that constitutes the psychotherapist's area of action. Improve how an individual relates to others, and they will naturally mature in relation to themselves. I shall put this to the test by exploring how my relationships with others affect my own internal system, taking up the ancient dictum, therapist, heal thyself.